Good afternoon, everyone, again. It's nice to see quite a number of you still with us. Um, we're down to home stretch. We've gone through quite a number of sessions in both tracks, but for the next 50 minutes, my goal really is to hope to provide you with fundamental knowledge of key components of Sage Intelligence Report Designer module. Hopefully, if this is your first exposure to Sage Intelligence Report Designer, this will be an overview. And for those of you that's already using Sage Intelligence Report Designer, hopefully this is going to be a refresher for you. But before we dive into the actual solution, just a bit of sort of a background, right? The agenda, what we're going to cover today. So the key areas that we'd like to cover today will focus on formulas, reporting trees, and dynamic account ranges. Hopefully you're familiar with these terminologies and hopefully you are using these functionalities today. But I just want to sort of go through with them and hope in the hopes that you may be able to pick something up. My goal is to share with you quickly how to build a P&L and a balance sheet, how to transform that into departmental reporting, right? The balance sheet and the P&L will rely on formulas. Departmental reporting will focus on reporting trees and lead sheets. I'm going to assume that many, if not all of us, have worked with lead sheets or heard of lead sheets in the past, especially for those that work with the auditors. And we're going to be using dynamic account ranges to build lead sheets. And we'll sort of cap off today with questions and answers regarding Report Designer. Quickly, report creation process. As Sage Intelligence is 100% Excel based, we have the capability of tapping into multiple data sources through the connector module. Whether it's multiple Sage 300 database or multiple data source, through the connector, we're able to establish what we call data container and use those containers through the report manager. All of you sitting here today who's on Sage 300 version 6.0 or higher have access to one version of report or one license of report manager. The purpose of report manager is acting as an administrator of the system, the ability to maintain, create, modify, delete reports, okay, to name a few. Then we sort of translate that into an Excel workbook, where then you're able to leverage Excel functionality such as pivot tables or specific add-ins, as we're going to see, for the report designer to build financial statements. Quickly about the intelligent licensing components, connectors. For those of you that would like to be able to consolidate or combine multiple Sage 300 databases, for those of you that would like to connect to other data sources, connector module is what you need. And this is site license, so you only would require to have one. As mentioned earlier, one copy or one license of Report Manager is included with all Sage 300 installation. However, this is what we call per workstation license, and I'll explain that a little bit later. While we talked about earlier that Report Manager acts as an admin of Sage Intelligence, Report Viewer are for those individuals who would like to have access to running the reports into their own parameters without needing to rely on other users. So those individuals would require a report viewer license where they have access to a menu or a portfolio of reports where they could run with the opportunity to enter parameter values. That is also licensed per workstation. And what we're going to see shortly is the report designer. It can be used on its own, and it is confusing as heck why Sage would use report manager, report designer, but this is the way it is. So think of Report Manager as the foundation of Sage Intelligence, and think of Report Designer is specifically for financial reporting, okay? And this report designer is a site license, and if you are on subscription, it is included in your subscription bundle. So whereas connector and designer are site licenses, report manager and viewer are per user. Sage Intelligence licensing model works in this manner: per Sage 300 user per workstation. Okay, so if Charis goes on her workstation, logs in, so she would take up one license. And then if she goes to Joe's workstation and try to log in, the system will say, sorry, Charis, you are already linked to your workstation. However, it is not entirely the same as per user licensing or per name user licensing, simply because through License Manager, you are able to reallocate licenses as required. Okay. So let's quickly dive into to some sort of a PowerPoint slides, and we'll jump into the solution formulas. Clients often ask, James, is this difficult to use? Is this more difficult than FR? Now, looking at the formulas, there's only 12 formulas. So the first question you need to ask yourself, am I able to learn 12 formulas? But we could take it one step further. Of those 12 formulas, 6 are numeric formulas that relates to building financial statements. 6 of the 12. Opening balance, closing balance, actuals, budgets, month to date, and year to date. 6. And for the most part, for balance sheet, we're primarily interested in only closing balance. Therefore, of these 6, you probably will only ever use maximum of 5. Hopefully, if you have budgets, if you don't, then you only need 2. So of the 12, 6 are number related, 5 are likely the ones that you're going to be using, and these ones are optional. These ones are to supplement functionality such as dynamic account ranges. If you don't need to use dynamic account ranges, the structure code and account description are likely not required. Company name, it's up to you whether or not you want the system to automatically pull the company name should you have multiple databases. Okay, but these 3 are what I consider as optional with potential usage. And then we have these. You might look and say, well, hey, James, why don't you want current year and current periods, right? And why don't you want quantity? Well, it's not that I don't want quantity, but for majority of you, you're probably not using the quantity feature of Sage 300 GL. If you are, then I will probably move them to the column beside it. But having said that, probably 95 to 98% of our clients do not utilize the quantity feature in the GL. And the reason why we don't use current year and current period, as we go through the solution, hopefully you will see very, very quickly why I don't want to use the current year and current period from the system. The solution is 100% dynamic, but I don't need to use these formulas for them to be dynamic. Okay. Reporting tree. Clients often, well, this is more true, I believe, for not-for-profit clients, right? I mean, for-profit clients, it's the same. If you have multiple departments, if you have multiple cost centers, divisions, regions, locations, basically multiple segments within your GL, right? There may be a need for you to report based on those segments. And reporting tree is a wonderful option for us to accomplish that, right? As you can see in this screenshot, right? It can 100% adhere to your GL structure. And we have the interface to build. And we'll take a quick look as we go into the solution. You have the ability to build, right? The structure that you need. Well, you might say, well, hey, James, isn't this exactly the same as what I have in Sage 300, reporting by segments and GL segments? Pretty much, right? But oops, the question is, for a not-for-profit organization where you may have 100 different cost centers and 5 different budget managers. Think about that, right? And each of them is responsible, for argument's sake, 20 cost centers. In the best case scenario, or when you first design your Sage 300 GL structure, you may allocate one cost center 1 to 20 for Joe, 21 to 40 for Barty, so on and so forth. Right? This is how we design our GL ranges. Because there's no one in their right mind will ever actually create a segment in the GL for Joe, for Barty. Right? That's just one extra layer. So in the event that you're 1 to 20 and 21 to 40 needs to be updated or needs to be changed or needs to be reallocated, then what? That's where you start seeing the value of a reporting tree, because we could easily rearrange, reorganize the reporting structure through the reporting tree that does not require us to renumber our chart of accounts. Okay, remember that. Fundamentally, we could use reporting tree to create reporting structures that doesn't match to our GL account structure. Okay. And then dynamic account ranges, right? Very, very neat tool. Okay. There's 4 sets of information that we have to create, that we need to set up in order to use dynamic account ranges, and we will go through them each step to build our own. Okay. Because this is an Excel add-in, whether it's dynamic account ranges or whether it's any of the formulas, it uses the function argument feature of Excel, right? We've seen this many, many times, whether it's sum, whether it's if, whether it's match and index, whatever formula, this is the way that Excel looks and feels. Okay. So the power of this is you could create one instruction line and have the system dynamically generate the list as you add or subtract accounts. Okay. To execute it, you got to click on refresh. Cross your fingers that you did it correctly. It's going to tell you, right? It's going to say, hey, it's successful. And this is the potential outcome. Okay. So with that, hopefully it gives you a glimpse of the functionality I like to cover. And I'm just going to jump right in to walk you through it. Okay. Sage 300, right? These are the various functionalities available, and I'm not going to go through them. Okay. For those of you that have, no, sorry, for all of you that have Sage Intelligence, right? You should have intelligence reporting. For those of you that doesn't see it, please keep in mind, Sage Intelligence is a subledger just like any other module. And if you have security groups set up for AR and AP, guess what? You need to have security groups set up for intelligence reporting. Therefore, the only user without any setup of security group that could see this list will be the admin user. Okay? So go back this afternoon, go back tomorrow. If you don't see it, make sure that there's a security group assigned to Sage Intelligence and you are assigned to one of those groups. And when you click on Report Manager, right, this is the look and feel. Okay. On the left-hand side, it's got a whole bunch of folders. And please ignore everything at the top. That's just my test and whatnot, right? But out of the box, Sage Intelligence provide you with sample reports, leveraging their single connection, leveraging their consolidated connections for consolidated reports, single reports, inventory, finance, dashboards, purchase, sales, so on and so forth. But if you're an early adopter of Sage Intelligence, let's say from version 6.0 or 2012, you're now on 2020, you could probably tell me, say, James, nothing has really changed in terms of the folder structures. It looks the same, the reports are the same. Have they done nothing in the last 7 years? The answer is absolutely not. Okay, please jot this down. Sage Intelligence Report Utility. We have that listed on our website. But effectively, that's the tool that Sage allows you to install, download, install, and it provides you access to additional reports. Lots of them. Receivable aging, payable aging, sales dashboard, purchase dashboard, cash flow statements using 5 different modules, right? This is one of the things that we didn't talk about earlier this morning, is the fact that pretty much every single report you see today or you're using today comes from one module. But with a solution, with a BI solution, not just Sage Intelligence, you're able then to create connections to multiple data sources, okay? But we're not here to see any of that because we're here to see financial statement, okay? This is something that we put together, right? I would love to share with you Sage's version of their financial reported capability, right? Or portfolio. I think Terrace has shown you a little bit earlier, right? But we all know that our financial report doesn't really look like that, right? So this hopefully will resonate with the group a little bit better because this is going to be something that you're accustomed to, right? There is no right or wrong financial statement format. This is just typical. But before we dive into the 3 key areas, right? My suggestion is for you to consider creating a landing page or a menu page, something that may look like this, right? Because the reason is, well, why do I need this? Well, look at how many tabs I have at the back, at the bottom. The goal really is I want to create a portfolio of reports instead of one report per file, like current FR allows us to do, right? But if you do that, do you really want to update the instructions for every single tab? The answer is probably no. So having a menu sheet like this will be great, right? And again, I just list out all the parameters that Sage Intelligence allow me to have. Company, fiscal year, fiscal period, currency, type, budget set, and department. These are the only parameter, no, these are the critical parameters that's mostly used, right? And this is the reason why I don't use the Sage current year and current period formula, because I want to have the ability to put in mine. I want to have the ability to change mine. If I put in that formula and change it, then it's going to be gone. So these are the 7 key parameters we use to build most of our reports. Okay. Now, one takeaway is, I mean, when you design reports, you probably reference to say, oh, you know, this cell uses the company ID, which is the menu page cell C7. That's absolutely fine. But my suggestion is, where possible, consider using name ranges, right? I have 15 tabs potentially, right? I may not always know where everything is. What happens if I insert a row here? What happens if I move things around? So considering using name ranges will help you, because if I'm creating an income statement 7 tabs down, all I need to know is it's going to be company ID. Okay? And I'm not the smartest guy, and I don't have the greatest memory. So for me, when I design this, I just put the name ranges on the side. Okay? And then, believe it or not, of the 12 formulas, right? They're not difficult at all. And as you start using the system, you're going to find, you know what? They're not difficult at all. The challenge that I often face is, how do I get the dates correctly? How do I make my rolling 12 fiscal periods lined up, the conditional if this then that work, not the 12 formulas. So if you look at my dates, this is one of the more complicated formula than any of the one that Sage provide us, right? But the long and the short is consider using a landing page where possible. Consider using dynamic name ranges, right? And if you want, you can make this interactive. You can make it so that you have a list of your reports here and just click, okay? And click menu, okay? So I want to share this with you. There is no right or wrong. And again, because I have bad memory and I'm terrible at match and index, right? I just remind myself to click Shift Control Enter to update match and index, because this is where you put information to help you run the reports. Okay. I need help, so I put this in, and every time I see an NA here or an error here, I just realize that, oh, I probably need to click on Control Shift Enter. Because this is a portfolio, so in addition to menu, it's probably a good idea to have a template sheet, right? Where it provides the fundamentals, the structures that you need for you to create your report. You may create a balance sheet, you may create an income statement, you may create a lease sheet, but pretty much this should be the framework in which you start. Of every page, right, you probably want sort of reference to the 7 key parameters, okay? And as you see here, right, they're named ranges. I don't need to know. See, I don't remember. I don't remember this is menu, cell C, whatever. I don't. But this is current fiscal year, right? But you also may want to sort of block this because you don't want the user to easily change this and break this. So my suggestion is perhaps hyperlink this back. If they want to change the year, bring them back to the menu. Okay, as simple as that. Okay, so I wouldn't call this tips and tricks. This is just something that we do. Okay. And then it sort of goes to, well, do you want to have provisions for dynamic account ranges? You might, right? So you might want to hide it. You say, well, whoa, why do you need a section? Well, I'm going to share with you dynamic account ranges for building a simple lead sheet. But what happens if you want to have a detailed balance sheet, detailed income statement by account? In those cases, you will need to stack dynamic account ranges on top of dynamic account ranges, and that's where the section here above makes sense. You could group all of your instructions together. Okay, so I left 2 columns, A and B, for instructions purposes, right? One is primarily for accounts, right? Single accounts or account groups. Oh, sorry, single accounts or account ranges, and the other one is for account groups. For those of you that's worked with me in the past, that's chatted with me in the past, if I haven't talked to you about account groups, please let me know, okay, because I probably didn't do my job. For financial reporting, account group is something that you probably should consider. It makes your reporting life a heck of a lot easier. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it at that. So this is fundamental structure. You could have this, you don't need to have it, but it's something that is a base that you could start with. So what is it that we need to build financial statements? I'm gonna assume that whether you're using FR, whether you're using Excel, today you have a format that you like, right? So step number 1, okay, create a sheet, okay? Copy and paste your format, okay? So to me, A and B, this is an older version, so I don't have the dynamic account ranges or whatnot, but A and B is a must, okay? So A and B is my instruction, right, section. And we simply copy our report, whether it's other Excel, whether it's FR. If it's FR, you need to generate the output, right? The bottom line is I need to have the format, or you need to have the format that you want. You say, well, aren't you going to show me doing a financial statement? Why is this all built? This is not built, right? Well, sort of. This is built because you built it using something else. You built it and I pulled it over with raw data, right? My conversation with my team and often with the customer is because there's only 5 formulas, It really shouldn't be that difficult to validate the information. I either get it right or get it wrong. It's either month to date or year to date, budget or actual, right? There's not a heck of a lot that could go wrong. The only thing that potentially could cause a headache is, did I get all the accounts or did I assign the group? Because if you tell me that your report is month to date, I got month to date format. So the only reason why it's probably not going to work is because we didn't capture all of the groups or the ranges, right? Now, you could pull the information with the data here, or you could basically put it on the side, right? Sometimes when I design reports, I like to take these two columns and put it on the side. Why? This is my check. Okay? This is my validation because as I build the report, I need to get exactly the same number, right? My assumption is always you build your financials using data from SACE 300 and you're not using any ratios or formulas to reallocate. That's true probably for 95% of statement design, right? So whether you leave it here with the numbers, right, or you built it, put it aside, this is what you need to work with. So step number one, as I mentioned, have your layout format, okay? Step number two, decide, right, or configure your account ranges or account groups. Again, I absolutely adore groups. Your cash and cash equivalent could be 1,000 to 1099. But if Joe wins the lottery tomorrow and whatever he puts in a cash account as 9999, you'll be scratching your head trying to figure out where that number went. Okay. But if you use a group, it doesn't matter where he puts it. Okay. Now, obviously, this is for demonstration purposes. I'm going to cheat. So I'm going to miraculously make the groups appear. Okay. The groups. Okay. There's no rocket science to the group. And for those of you that's worked with your auditors and that's using Caseware, they've already got groups for you. If you want, you could use their group. I think it's A for cash. I think B or C for receivables, BB for payable, so on and so forth, right? Or you could create your own. The only thing is that notice mine's only numbers, right? But my numbers is in sequential order. You may want to leave some room in between, but if you go and say cash, AR, investments, that will work 100%. But when you look at your account group list, they're not going to be in the order like this. Not that it's important or it's a must, but for some people, they just want to see it listed this way. And that's why I decided, you know what? We're so used to one being asset, right? So my 01 will be current asset, and any other components of current asset, I would use 02, 03, whatever to represent that. Okay, so step one, format. Now, for those of you that worked with me in the past, right, in addition to format, I always say, please, please, please give me the formulas, right? So you'll be surprised, there's actually statements provided to us that doesn't balance, okay? So our request is layout with formulas. I don't care about well, I mean, I do care about the numbers because I need it to validate, okay? So layout with formulas, account groups or account ranges. Now we're ready to go. You have the format that you're using or you've been using and you're okay with, and you assign the groups. So now let's go take a look at formulas. Okay. 12 formulas. If you listened to me earlier, you know that there's actually only one formula for balance sheet, and that is closing balance. I'm going to take it and drag it over. Okay, before I do that, let's sort of go back. Before I do that, right, I mean, just so that we're good. So before we do that, I'm going to put that number there, grab the closing balance, put it here. Okay, say, whoa, 31 million. Why is that? Well, that's because we haven't done anything yet. We simply pulled the formula, and now let's launch the functional editor and take a look at the various components. I've been doing this for 7, 8 years now. There are certain fields that I have never ever used yet. Okay, but account is important in some cases, but not in our case. Company is important. Well, does anybody know the cell reference? I don't. But do I care? I don't either. Oh, maybe I do. Right? Is it company ID? It should be company. Okay, company. Oh, that's right. That's okay. Current fiscal year. Current fiscal period. Okay. Now, account group, I can't do that, but I pulled the account group to column B. So I'm just going to go here, okay, and I'm going to click on F4. To make your life easier, you're going to find F4 key is your friend, right? You want to be able to sort of position it that will make your report design experience easier. Now, in this particular case, I don't necessarily need to use current fiscal year, because if you notice whatever I'm doing, right, I have the year at the top. So if I want to make this dynamic, I could simply reference the cell at the top. Okay. So if I do $F$14, then I don't have to worry about it when I copy to other columns. Same thing for my account group, right? $B17, then I don't have to worry about going up and down. Okay. This is not Sage Intelligence. This is Excel. You don't need to do any of this because it just makes your life a little bit more, well, just going to be a little bit more work, but it's not the end of the world, right? Group category code I've never used. Account structure, not in this particular case. Balance type, never used. Currency code, currency, only relevant if you're multi-currency. Currency type, right? Only relevant if you're using multi-currency. And reporting tree, no, I call it department. Okay. Now I have a number. If I click on OK, is it the same as column I-17? We just did a validation, right? And that's why, again, when we talk to you, say, please give us a prior period statement. This is why, because it makes our life easier. It makes your life easier, because when we deliver the report, we know that it balanced 100%. This is not rocket science. You give us the input, our responsibility is to give you exactly the same output. It doesn't matter if we're doing it, you're doing it, it's the same. Okay, so now what do we need to do? Because the way that we position the dollar sign, I could just drag. Now, yes, I could drag, but these are little things that annoys me, right? I mean, true financial statements have certain places you need to put the dollar sign, right? And it should be bottom, sort of top line instead of bottom line, right? But one formula, now I have the whole section done. One formula, now I have the prior year done. Notice nothing changed. If I just do all of this and drag it over, nothing's changed to the prior year. Why? And all of them are now, oops, formulas. The reason is we made it the report look at the date here. Okay, so here I could say current fiscal year, right? Here I could say prior fiscal year, right? Please note, I've done this so many times, I practiced so many times, right? But it's not that much more than beyond what I'm sharing with you. I'm not going to go through the entire report, obviously, right? But what have we learned? I talked about 10 minutes on one report, and all I ever showed you was using one formula. Is that difficult? I hope not, right? So you could use the same idea to complete your report, right? And for me, I always like to know whether or not my assets equal liability and shareholders equity, right? So to build the balance sheet, I leverage closing balance formula, put in the parameters required, referencing using name ranges, right? And there you go. And this is a comparative. So let's quickly go through income statement, right? This is a very typical income statement. I mean, I expanded a little bit because before it should just year to date, current year versus prior year. But to be able to share with you the capabilities, right? Actual budget variance, right? This is what I've done. Multi-column. Again, you need to have the format, okay? And you need to have the numbers. And whether it's account range or whether it's account group, it doesn't really matter, right? Both will absolutely work. And as you can see, I could use both, right? But here's my groups. Oh, this is not gonna work. Can anybody tell me why this is not gonna work? Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so I added a extra row. So I'm gonna do this. Perfect. Okay. It didn't line up. So there we go. All right. Now, same thing. Numbers. Numbers. So in this particular case, I want year to date, right? We go to our 12 formulas. We take year to date, actual year to date. We pop it over, right? So you're gonna see a common theme over and over again, okay? Because it's drag and drop, functional argument. Look for company, type in company, okay? Look for the year. I'm gonna look for the year at the top, make it F4. I think this needs to be this way. Then I could do current fiscal period. Account group code is on the side, okay? And currency code, currency. Have you noticed something? Did it matter if this was balance sheet or income statement? Am I not typing exactly the same thing? The answer is yes. And I probably screwed something up. Year 2020, company fiscal year, currency type. Oh, yeah. It helps if I could spell. Okay. No, P-A-R. Oh, I just realized all of this is going to be captured on video. Okay, currency type, function. Here we go. Okay. And because this is revenue, and we know that in Sage 300 revenue is negative, right? There you go. And now you could copy this down if you want, okay, and just take away the negative if you wish. I'm probably going to miss my underline. I don't want the dollar sign. But now, Control C all the way down, Control V. This is a formula. Oh, actually, this is not. I should have copied it as a formula. I apologize. Here we go. Right. So I went by very, very quickly, but I dragged actual year to date. Actual year to date. Now, I do want to do budget comparative. Well, I simply go pull budget year to date. And there you go, right? And you repeat the process. Now, as you get more and more familiar, right? I mean, you could basically cheat a little bit. Control C, Control V. Now, cheating here, I could now just change this to actual, actual to geo budget, but it's not that easy. The reason is you shifted, right? We shifted our requirements. So after current fiscal period, right, then it's budget set, but we didn't have budget set for our actual. So now everything is misaligned by 1. Now I could go through and update this, right? Or I could simply go current fiscal period, right? And just type in 01, I think. I think it's 01. Oops, let's see. I probably got that wrong, so let's go take a look, right? Budget set 1. Okay. Is it 01 or 1? Okay, well, there's got to be a budget, so my apologies. Okay, so I got company, I got year 2020. Oh, I see. Okay, budget set code. Wow. There we go. Okay, I might as well just type everything. Department. Okay. My group. Do I have my group? Account group is B17. Yeah, so this should be right. Account group code, current fiscal period, current fiscal year, company. Okay. So obviously I screwed something up. Okay, so let's take the long way. Budget year to date. Okay, go here, go here. Okay. Oops. Okay. Current fiscal period. Okay. Budget set code. Oh, it should be budget set. Sometimes you go too fast and you forget what you need to do. Account group code. Okay. And simply finish off with currency, currency type, and department. Done. Okay. Minus. Okay. And then simply do this as a formula. And then the rest, whether it's variance or whether it's percentage or dollar, this is just Excel, right? This is just Excel. So then you could say equals this minus this, okay? And do whatever you need to do with the formula. So I think we're going to be a bit short for time. I'm not going to do any of that. And then you're able to copy your formula down. So notice so far, for balance sheet, I use 1 formula, GL closing. For P&L year to date, I use 2. GL actual, YTD, GL budget, YTD. So if you wanted actual and month to date side by side, you could simply take these 4 columns, copy it over, replace the formula of YTD 300 to GL actual YTD 300, just remove YTD. Then you will have your month to date versus year to date. I kept my promise. I used 5 formulas only to build the balance sheet and P&L. But what about departmental reporting, right? So let's go take a look at the reporting tree that we talked about and look at the sample company. You could create as many trees as you desire. And in this particular case, for those of you that's familiar with Sage's sample data, right? Hopefully you could see that this is actually a consolidated statement from 2 Sage 300 databases, SAM Inc. and SAM Limited. Okay, share with you the capability of the connector to pull multiple Sage 300 databases. And I'm able to use those information to build a tree that has different, that uses different database, right? SAM Inc., SAM Limited, and the divisions within it and the region within it. And as per the, the screenshots, right, as I click on each and every one of them, right, there is a unit tree preview outlining the accounts for those branches. So this is child-parent relationship, right? When you take a look at this, is okay, this is fine, right? But this is exactly how Sage 300 will be able to report anyways. You're right. But what happens if you say, okay, well, hey, Sam Inc. is going to be Joe, okay? And Joe is going to be responsible Sam Inc. 100. Oops, right? All of 100, right? I don't care about, right? Now, unfortunately, this is by no means a full training session, right? You might be sitting there and scratching your head. What the heck is dollar sign? What the heck is star? So those are the things that we will go through with you in a full training session. But this is how we built the tree. Okay. So I could create a branch called Joe, right? Then I could say Sam Inc. James, right? Oops. But the beauty of this is still very simple instruction. But what happens now if Joe is northern, eastern, and western, and James is southern? How do we do that in FR? Not very easy, right? Because you no longer have the capability of using the range 10 to 40, right? So now Joe and James is at the bottom. But imagine if you already have your structure set, but we know that in a non-for-profit environment, cost centers gets reallocated all the time, right? I'm probably gonna screw up my tree, but I just want to illustrate the capability. If for whatever reason, the southern of retail, or the southern retail of department 200, okay, needs to be reallocated to Joe, I mean, I could just create this branch again, southern, right? Or I could simply drag and drop, okay? So if I'm gonna take, let's say, oops, so I just created another relationship, but that's wrong. But I'm gonna take the southern of department 200 and bring it up. This is the flexibility of reporting tree. I could reallocate departments or cost centers to different branches without having to change my GL structure, without having to do account code change, because it's only reporting change. You no longer care whether or not your divisions or cost centers are sequential. Okay. So I'm going to pull myself back here. I'm just going to do this again. Okay. Oops. So I'm going to realign it. Okay. This is how we build a tree. You could build as many trees as many different combinations as you wish. So how do I apply the tree? How do I use this? Well, let's just take a look. I think I have an income statement somewhere that I could share with you. See, this is my income statement by company. Sam Inc., Sam Limited. I use the instruction at the top for database ID. If you look at the bottom, right, you're gonna see me referring back to here by clicking on F2, right? Okay, just to show you that. Income statement by division. Majority of the time, what you have on the side, especially for P&L, they're the same. You may want to look at the information differently from a column perspective, right? So this, you're able then to copy columns over, and then again, using the same format to say, okay, if I take this away now, okay, I'm gonna start taking this away. Boom, you get your full trial balance. No filter whatsoever. But in this particular case, I want Sam Limited Commercial Northern. Well, what do? You open up your tree, Sam Limited, you open up your commercial, right? And you drag your Northern up to the top. There you go. This is how you leverage the tree to provide you with departmental reporting. In this particular case, I got multi-levels, right? But regardless, right, this is a real practical use of reporting tree. So we quickly went through how to build a simple P&L, a simple balance sheet using 5 formulas, and expand that so that I can now have some sort of departmental, right, or management reporting by region, side by side, right? So let's take a look at the dynamic account ranges. Okay. So I'm going to go back to here. I mean, I set up a little bit, right, so the foundation. And I mean, if you want, you can list the step out here. It doesn't really matter, right? We saw the screenshot earlier. I need to define a template row. I need to select the columns. I need to be able to define the ranges, so on and so forth. These are the steps that you need to go through. So let's go through them. Close that. So I'm going to go back, go to tools. Tools is where we set up dynamic account ranges. It says dynamic account ranges, and it allows you to set up here. The items that we need, right? Imagine dynamic account ranges requires only one row of information, one. So actually, before I do that, I should probably create that row, right? I'm gonna say 4,000, okay? And I'm just gonna, oh, I just closed my tree. Here we go, okay. So I'm gonna use the closing balance, right, with my formulas. Okay, closing balance, put it here. So this is gonna be my trial balance, right? I'm gonna need a closing balance, and I'm going to update this. So the year, I could probably just, I'll just use current fiscal year, it doesn't really matter. Okay. Now, account groups, I'm going to put it up here, okay? Because this is going to be a lead sheet for a specific group. As you saw my instructions, this is optional. You don't have to do this, but I want to. Okay? And then I'm just going to wrap this up with okay, and department. Basically, for reporting tree, it's the department segment. Okay, this is the department field here. Okay, so boom. Now, remember I said there's 6 number formulas that you will likely use, and there are 3 optional formulas that you may use, but we're going to use 2 of them now. Okay, we're going to use account description, right? Because there's no way you're going to manually type in dynamically all of the accounts, just not possible. Okay. If you expand it, right, it's very simple. It's asking for company and it's asking for accounts. Okay. Done. Oops, sorry. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll change that. Okay. And same thing for structure, right? Account structure. This is usually where I will ask you, well, why do we need account structure? Okay. But since you can't talk, you need account structure because if you have segmented GL, right? What do you do with 4,000 and 4,000-100, 4,100-100-10, right? So that's why for dynamic account ranges, we need to have the account structure to identify this is a particular structure that is different than 4,000-100. Okay, so I'm gonna jump back into my company. Again, this is up to you how you want to do this. I'm going to select Sample Company Inc. Okay, and go back to my dynamic account ranges. It now says 4,000 sales ACC. So this is just setting it up, right? This role. So now let's get into our dynamic account ranges. I go to Tools, I go to Setup. Step number 1, define template role. Click the template role, define the role, highlight the role. This is a very, very simple instruction. Done. Okay. Second, select the account column. Click. Account column is C, right? Okay. Step number 3, select account ranges. So it's up to you, right? Here, this is why I have a dynamic account range section, because now I could say 1,000 to 9999, right? We didn't even talk about how the system uses or define ranges, right? It uses the word to, right? It's very intuitive. If you want a range, it's going to be 1,000 to 9999, right? Oh, sorry. This is my, too excited, forgot to select. There we go, okay? And whether or not you want to exclude 0 rows, so on and so forth, but the last piece of instruction, okay, is going to be where do you want to put that instruction, okay? And here, right, I have a field called dynamic account range instruction. I'm going to put it there, okay? I now input most of the requirements, right, except for the optional one. So what is your expectation of this particular report when it runs? Let's find out. Right, let's click on refresh. Oops, it went wrong. That's not good. Okay. Okay, 4,000 says sales. So 1,000. Oh, account ranges 1,000 to 1099. Here's my That's good. Why did it go wrong? Okay, it doesn't like it. Okay, so let's start from scratch. My instruction role. Columns of accounts. Contains the accounting rules. 1,002, yeah. And then next, where I save my instructions. So everything looks exactly the same. Not quite sure what the problem is. Okay, and it didn't work. I apologize. So, but let's go quickly take a look at something that I do have, right? The sheet 1012. Okay, so very similar, just layout slightly different, right? I have 1,000 to 1016, right? Because this is my, if I click on refresh, oh, something went terribly wrong here. Okay, let me double check. And this is my version of something, a caseware sample. So for those of you using caseware, you might have seen it before. Okay, so I'm a little bit embarrassed, but we're running out of time. So if there are any questions, by all means, believe me, dynamic account ranges absolutely work. It did work even this morning. However, I'm going to entertain questions, and if I could fix it, I'll definitely share with you. If not, then I will obviously give me a call. We'll go through it. And but this is dynamic account range, and hopefully, the last 55 minutes, we quickly gone through 3 critical components of Sage Intelligence Report Designer: formulas, reporting tree, and dynamic account ranges. So Remington, if we could open up the floor for questions.
Yeah, I do have some questions that have come in already. So the first is there a migration path from Sage 300 FR to Sage Intelligence?
That is a great question. The answer is no. However, right, fundamentally, what do we talk about, right? We need the layout. So in FR, you could generate the layout, right? FR is a specification type of reporting tool. You run it, and then you have the output. So the output is going to be the layout you take over to Sage Intelligence. Now, right, there's ways to define the account ranges, right? It's going to be colon, right, 1000 to colon 4999 as an example, right? So some of them we could do find and replace. You could replace colons with 2 TL, right? Things like that. So there are rules for migration, but there's no tool for migration.
We have a period in our Sage called ADJ after period 12. Can this be pulled on Sage as well? Our current reports do not give us this option.
Right. Now, it says ADJ when you run the report in Sage 300. But Sage 300 is actually a 15-period system. 1 to 13 is for your day-to-day operations for organizations where you may have most commonly 12, some may be 13, right? ADJ is period 14. Okay, that's why when you type ADJ, it doesn't work because it needs to look for period 14.
Can users without Sage Intelligence licenses view reports?
Yes and no. Okay, so if you create this as a static copy, right, if you use the distribution capability, you can make this static, meaning that you could take the formulas that I actually had to put in, right, but you can make them static. So all of these will be numbers. Okay, but that's through distribution. But if you create this report and then you send this report off to an end user who doesn't have the report viewer license, when they get it, right, what's going to happen? Well, the system doesn't recognize what this is, right, and it will fail. So if you keep the formulas or the Sage Intelligence reporting designer formula in, then the user will need to have a license to be able to see it. Otherwise, it would just be gibberish.
We currently have a bunch of report templates that we use in Financial Reporter to generate financial statements. Can we use these same templates within intelligence reporting, or do we need to redesign the templates?
I wouldn't call it redesign, but unfortunately, you do have to recreate them using the formulas of Sage Intelligence. So as mentioned earlier, what you need to do, run your FR report, copy the output, right, the bottom section, to a sheet like this, and then start working on weather's group, weather's range, and then within each of those cells, right, put in the formulas that's available. Okay, so generate the output, copy the output, put it into a sheet like this, put into groups, put into parameters, and update the formulas. That's your migration path from FR to Sage Intelligence. So it's not a total redo because I'm going to assume that you already like your FR report format, right? So you could keep the format, you just need to update the instructions.
Can intelligence be used in conjunction with quantity as well?
Absolutely, right? So here, the quantity formula, because this will give you metrics, right? Now, some clients will reserve a certain sections of their GL for statistical information. That's perfectly fine, right? In the absence of a quantity field, you may allocate account ranges 9,000 and beyond for statistical information, and therefore you don't need necessarily to use quantity. The flip side of that is, well, that's a financial number and that must balance. Okay, so you need to do journal entries to get the information in. If you were to use the quantity now you could use the quantity again with a set of accounts all by its own, or you could use quantities with a number. So revenue, right? If this was a clinic, then you could say, hey, this is fees charged, and then you have the quantity for that account, and then you could bring both in to say, oh, what's my revenue per visit? Okay, so that's a practical example of where you could use quantities. But the answer is yes.
I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this one simply, but how does one hide the blank rows in the SI Report Designer FS?
Okay, there's variety of ways to do so, right? And Neville, a senior consultant on our team, right, have developed a macro, okay, that you could run, right, during during the execution of the report. So effectively, the hiding of the 0 rows is utilized with a macro. Okay, so we create a column where we take a look at whether or not, right, there are any numbers, right, for that particular row. So, I mean, there's going to be a formula to determine which row we should suppress. And by doing that, by identifying a row with a formula, and upon running the report in Report Manager, right, if you expand and show the advanced feature, it will allow you to run a macro. So that macro will, if you set up that macro, and Neville, myself, or any of our consultants to walk you through it, then you execute that macro, and then that macro, when you're done the report with a whole bunch of 0 rows, we execute that macro, and then it will suppress or eliminate those rows. So it's done through a macro.
I have the report manager, but not the report designer. Is this something my administrator would need to give me access to?
Report designer is a site license, and again, it depends on the version that you're on and the installation method, whether you're on your server, RDP to your server, or whether you have local install, because report designer is a module that needs to be installed. Okay, and therefore, because if you're on a subscription, then you should have access to it. Okay, so it's not a feature that you could turn on and off. So if you don't see it, give us a call. We probably have to take a look at whether it's installed, and you could double check whether is it just you can't see it or others within the organization cannot see it either. That will probably point us to the right direction as what may be the cause of that.
Someone asked if this Excel file can be provided as a template or sample.
I have to ask Joe. I will definitely do that.
And the last question I have here is, can I schedule and distribute reports?
100%, right? So Tara's just walked you through it, okay? And if I go to BI Tools, right, what she did with you an hour ago is available, right? The whole structure, distribution setting, the management instructions. So the thing is, right, you may want to think twice before sending this to the intended audience, right? Often clients will say, oh my God, this is so good, I have this functionality, but when they sort of step back and think about it, they will probably 9.9 out of 10 times still go through the scheduling like Tara's mentioned, but schedule it to send it to themselves. Schedule it so they could review the output and make sure it's okay before it goes out to the intended audience. But as you see here, you have the full scheduling capability here.
And with that being all of the questions we have for today, I'd just like to thank you, James, for presenting, as well as everyone for taking time out of their busy day to join us for BAASS Connect Virtual Sage Business Intelligence. We hope you found the sessions today to be beneficial. All attendees should have received a survey today at 3:45 Eastern Standard Time, and in order to receive a certificate of attendance, you will need to complete the survey. If you did not receive the email yet, please check your junk box. As a reminder, all of today's sessions have been recorded, so if you were on one track and not the other, you will receive both tracks recordings. If you asked a question that was not answered, we will have someone from BAASS follow up with you directly. And a reminder that our next event is Tuesday, November 17th, covering customer relationship management, and we hope you can join us there. Thank you, everyone.